Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to I Screen, You Scream for Movies for Monday, October 30th. Fuck it, it's a raw feed. We're doing it live. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Danny Escamilaggi, and I have returned from my long status hiatus of my podcast. And real quick, for those new listening, and for those that still listens to my show, I will recap my last episode where I reviewed Gran Turismo. And not only I had a guest, we were talking about the movie, but I had a little announcement of my show going forward, which I would be on hiatus, which was because, in case no one knows what's going on with the world, let me just put this out. I don't mean the whole status of the world. I mean, like, something particular in the status. And that is the SAG after strike. That's been going on since midsummer, and what it usually does is that actors are on strike while studios are shutting down production on filming, on TV shows, movies, and in movies that are coming out lack promotion from actors, which actors can't promote on strike. And they also happen to tend to delay some movies that meant to come out but lack promotion for awareness. In this case, what hindered me pretty badly from doing this podcast for the first couple months of September and halfway through October, Warner Brothers has delayed one of my second most anticipated films of 2023, Dune Part 2. It just killed me, the fact that this was the most big movie I was waiting on, and I'm sure most people were so hyped for this movie since the first movie was ever beloved and loved, which came out in 2021. And this is the big unfortunate fact. It's missing in the fall box office status of moviegoing, which I will say it's not too bad from last month, but most of the movies that came out were stinkers to promotions, but some may have good hits, some may not have. I even canceled a few movies I was going to tend to see because of the Hollywood strike, the SAG after strike, I canceled seeing The Equalizer, I canceled seeing The Creator, and even I was going to come out to see the new Saw, which I heard it's so good. But I was like, not good anticipated. And then right through October, I didn't have a slight chance to go watching Killers of the Flower Moon, which I heard is pretty good. And then there was a Taylor Swift movie. There was also The Exorcist Believer. I had neither interested in those films. But one film that captured my ideal for loving video game adaptations, which, let me tell you all, they have been on a hot streak in terms of IP. People coming out to see these films. So, this is a film worth my comeback to this episode and reviewing this film. I was going to even wait till November, but then this film managed to grab my attention as the film got closer to release. And this is a video game adaptation of Five Nights at Freddy's. And just to quickly talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, for those who are unsure or don't know what this film is, it is a survival horror video game franchise, which involves you as a player playing as a security guard, and your task is to sit out at midnight in that game, watching around cameras as the game takes place in a pizzeria, Chuck E. Cheese, kind of like parody factor setting. All I can say, it's a parody Chuck E. Cheese place called Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. This is where animatronics have been haunted, and the player has to sit there on all monitors, monitoring their awareness, their movements, to survive all night. And if you fail to even see where they're going to prevent their move, they will come at you and jump scare you, which means you die. So I hope I explained a lot on this, and also to point this out as well, while I am a huge lover for gaming adaptations, I'm not a huge Five Nights at Freddy's guy. But I am aware how popular this franchise is across streamers and even kids alike. This is the kind of film that I will also explain the box office at the end later of this episode if you are interested to listen to box office results for this film. I do have a young brother who loves the Five Nights at Freddy series, and he loves that film. But for me, I will explain this film into depth because I may not be a fan, but I do want to break down a little hard on this film just to compensate the difference for general movie-going audience and critics, which, to point this out, critics don't matter. So, allow me to talking about Five Nights at Freddy's in this review episode. So, alright, so to begin, I did see Five Nights at Freddy's as of Sunday, October 29th. I had no one to go see it with but myself. Worth a shot. So, my initial thoughts to this movie. I think it was pretty decently okay. Now, this is coming from someone who doesn't know or love the Five Nights at Freddy's stuff. But there is a reason why, which I was disappointed. Don't get me wrong. Universal have dumped this movie date in theaters and on streaming on Peacock, which is a sign to point this out. The last film they did that was Halloween Ends. It came out in last year. So this is a sign that it means they shit this movie pretty bad. And when they announced this day and date a few months ago, I'm like, this ain't good. Even if it's a Blumhouse movie, which they usually make insane amount of low budget horror movies, which they would always be a win. But as the movie gets closer, the general audiences and fans of this franchise became so aware with this movie. And I'm still going to break this down real quick that I may not super duper love this movie. Like, I don't think it's the greatest video game movie ever made, but it's a solid adaptation to the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. And I'm going to explain that Universal and Blumhouse made this movie for the fans of the Five Nights at Freddy's fans out there. They done a great job bringing the source material with such poise to the likings for the fans. So, this is pretty cool, especially how they made this movie for just the fans. And this is where the critics shit this movie, thinking this whole review matters. But let me just say this real quick. The general audiences matter because they tell you if it's worth watching. But here's what I'll say. If you're not a Five Nights at Freddy's guy or girl, you probably will say this is just a mediocre horror movie at the best. But if you're a Five Nights at Freddy's guy who will encourage other gamer fans out there to see this movie, that they will say they loved it and it's worth watching. That's if you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, which most of that population do. Because that's how the audience's reception will pick up word of mouth and get this movie to be seen on the big screen. Or in the sense, like I said, this is where critics shit this movie, which is why Universal did this day and date. This is where some people will choose to watch it at home. And I'm not a streaming guy. I am a big screen theatrical dude who I would love to see movies no matter what. In this case, I saw Five Nights at Freddy's on the big screen the way it's supposed to be and the way I love to tend to support movies for a reason. Now, I do want to explain the little iffy parts on this movie. Like I said, it's not perfect. I do think it's a solid adaptation, so what I will say is that the human stuff in this movie is kind of horrible. I don't mean like characters or actors in this movie, which I can't wait to go over this cast in a bit on the good side of that. There is the plot of this movie, in terms of humans, is a little mediocre. It's just not good. And I guess that makes sense. It's because Five Nights at Freddy's don't have significant storytelling in the games. So they made this movie out of that just to make the storytelling work for this kind of universe. On top of that, it has cruddy dialogue, which I wasn't aware how bad this dialogue be. They did re-improvise the scripting a bit. So the dialogue is still messy. And I guess sort of bad pacing on top of that, which kind of gets a little iffy on the side. So these are the qualities of this bad stuff in this movie for like general audiences, critics, that non-fans of gamers, by the way, Five Nights at Freddy's, would be ideal why this movie is rather not to be seen and they would see it on Peacock. But that's not all the bads in this movie, which I do like this movie, not in a super duper way. But like I said, it's a solid adaptation, and I will explain the good stuff. I did explain the goodest part is that Universal and Blumhouse made this movie for the fans, which brings me the heart to see people react in this movie very positive. And the fans of the franchise of Five Nights at Freddy's adore this movie a ton. Incredible. Very nice job. The animatronics, which go into this when they were showing this teaser and all, looked amazing. They moved visually great. They looked amazing. I don't know how they did this, but the studios knows what the animatronics did it look like, and they made it so great for like such look. So the animatronics looked very great in this movie, and daunting for sure, in a great way. And so the castings in this movie is by Josh Hutcherson, who plays the security guard as Mike Schmitty. You also got Matthew Lillard, which he's well known, playing Stumacher from the Scream franchise, and playing Shaggy in the Scooby-Doo live-action movies. Now, out of those casts, I like those guys both. I thought they really have great performance. Josh Hutcherson, though, he's from The Hunger Games, which most fans of The Hunger Games would know. And I think he did a great job, and I think he looked good in this movie for the sake of it, even if the human plot is, like, terrible. So, Matthew Lillard, for some reason, gets praised a lot, and I think he's a great scene stealer in some parts of the movie as well. So, on top of that, a very interesting cameo is in this movie, and if you are a Five Nights at Freddy's person, you will glad to see this guy, which goes by the name Corey X Kenshin. He is a YouTuber and a big Five Nights at Freddy's dude. He is in this movie as a cameo. Very impressive for what Universal and Blumhouse think and what the fans would love to see. Especially, I'm sure many fans were praising, clapping for his cameo appearance. That's something. So, very nice job for what Universal and Blumhouse made this movie for, and great for the general audiences to actually enjoy this more than just critics. And again, not to be just on the iffy side, I still don't think it's like 10 out of 10, 8 out of 10. You know, listen, I think I give this a 7 out of 10 for like how much the studios put this movie for the fans, make this gaming adaptation look solid, and, you know, bring in such promising things with this IP. I think it's so respectable. Universal and Blumhouse did a great job, which, FYI, this movie was also developed first by Warner Brothers, which they're already shitting a lot on the movies this year, except Barbie, that this kind of development took so long that they took forever, and it switched over to Universal, and then one of the greatest studios of horror making low budgets, Blumhouse. So they are the right studios for the right job, and they made this movie look very fascinating for the fans. This is like my biggest praise for this whole movie. This movie's well done for the fans and made well efficiently for those type of people out there. So, my overall thoughts, it's a pretty solid adaptation. Not the greatest. Does have some iffy stuff after all, especially with the day and date thing. So, but I think it's a solid adaptation. Like I said, Universal Blumhouse did amazing. Animatronics looks great. The performances were nice. The cameo, Corey X. Kenshin, which all Five Nights at Freddy's fans will know him for, it was in this movie. So I think it's a pretty solid adaptation to the fullest. I think it's not the worst movie, but let's just say for those that aren't the fans, do label this as one of the worst films, but not for the audiences at least, so we'll see. You know, I think this movie's already a success, which right now I will be going over the box office for this movie, which incredible numbers, pre-sale numbers for a horror movie. So, Five Nights at Freddy's, according to the box office, as I already jogged notes down, has made one of, if not one of the biggest opening. Now, I'm going to go over records, not to be in general, but it has made over one of the biggest opening weekends for a Blumhouse movie, beating Halloween 2018, which made 76. Five Nights at Freddy's, I was predicting this movie would go 84 because the way the pre-sales look were gigantic for a movie like this. So, unfortunately, with this day and date left money on the table, this would have made more, but it's still a hit. Five Nights at Freddy's made $78 million opening weekend. Like I said, becoming the biggest opening weekend for a Blumhouse, beating Halloween 2018. The second highest opening video game adaptation behind the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which on a 3-day made $143 million this year and came out with a 5-day of $206 million, which benchmark crazy. This is the biggest opening for a video game film. It is also the second biggest opening weekend for a date behind Black Widow, which came out in 2021 on Disney Plus. It's a raw feed. Disney's date with Black Widow, which made $80 million. It is also the biggest opening weekend for a horror film of 2023, which overtook Scream 6, which made $44.4 million, which also became a record-breaking franchise record. And third biggest opening horror film at the BO, only behind two movies, the first It movies. It Chapter 2, which made 91, and It made in 2017 made $123.4 million. These records are staggering, especially this movie is low budgeted for a Blumhouse. It cost only $20 to $25 million to make. And judging by the domestic and also the international numbers, which came out at 52, Five Nights at Freddy's made over $130 million worldwide, which even if this movie drops significantly big because of the date, it's still a hit. An absolute hit of the year for a video game horror. So, as I'm about to explain how this opening weekend came to be at $78 million, Five Nights at Freddy's is a big IP for all gamers alike. And to compensate this also, I was also at the movies, and I seen young kids. I'm not saying under 10s or 7s, but I mean kids that play the Five Nights at Freddy's for like for God knows how long this franchise lives, and this IP is recognizable all over. It is a phenomenon this franchise is for a video game horror franchise. And even it's on day and date. Most of the people don't know what Peacock is as a streaming service, which also gives the fact why this movie did big on a daily basis of a opening weekend. So I have the demos right here for demographics. I got them from Deadline, from an article by Anthony D's for Disney, D'Alessandro. Must read this guy on movie box office business. The demographics I jogged. Males were 57%, females were 43%. Ages wise, this is a big one. Ages between 13 and 17. Most of that demo. And I guess maybe under 12 or, the point is a lot of kids show up for this movie. Under 17 and 13 were 36%. Big demo right there for a video game horror. Especially, not to mention, this is a surprising factor, it is a PG-13 rating film, which is not an R-rated, which would have kind of hindered this approach. But I think the PG-13 is really fair for this movie, for sure. Under 25 were 35%. I am in that demo, which I'm 23 as we speak. And then the demo for 35 to 44 were 3%. So not much older audiences came out because they don't know what Five Nights, but I bet some of them took their kids to see it. In that sense, at least for me. And on top of that, for how this audience reception really worked out, especially for the Five Nights at Freddy's fans, the cinema score is at an A-, and the audience score from Rotten Tomatoes is at 89%. While the critics rating is at 20-something%, somewhere low, obviously. But this is what I mean. Critics don't matter for box office. I think the audiences really matter more than anything to why this IP delivered big what it meant to be, which came a surprising fact. This movie is projecting around 40s to 50s and an over-project with such incredible numbers for Friday, which made nearly $40 million for this IP. Estimates were raised, made 78. Audiences like this movie. The fans love this movie. Explains the cinema score. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes 89%. It's a big phenomenon since Mario, and there hasn't been insane hits. Well, I could say Taylor Swift was a big hit for obviously many reasons. The fans of the Swifties out there, but the next phenomenon was Five Nights, and it was yet to be coming as it got big. And on top of that, I forgot to jog this, but it came in my head. Universal and Blumhouse, Universal, excuse me, promotedly did a great job promoting this movie to the fullest. They've done some great promotions, especially, there's one example that I even noticed before I recorded this episode. As I was watching the Chicago Bears versus the Los Angeles Chargers game before it started, they were playing some kind of promotional footage of this movie, which they're still doing a great job promoting this film out there. And obviously this is a Halloween weekend too on top of that. Forgot to mention, it's also a Halloween weekend too. And on top of that, they also partnered up with Dave & Buster's. They also promoted pizza in movie theaters where there is a pizzeria box of Freddy Fazbear, which is available in franchise locations. And this is a funny thing too. I was at the movies that moment when I was asking about the pizza box of Freddy Fazbear. And the theaters I was at is Imagine. It's one of the locations they promoted for these pizza boxes. And on day one of the release, they said it sold out. And I still had pizza anyways, because Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria is Five Nights at Freddy's. How can you enjoy a movie like this? Which makes sense. You gotta have pizza if you all also a Five Nights at Freddy's dude. But I like to get in this kind of stuff. So I had pizza, but unfortunately they didn't have any Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria boxes, which Universal literally did a great job getting these kind of marketing factors to get awareness out. Like, this is huge. With the strike going on top of that, there was no actors promoting this whatsoever. But the studios like Universal did what they did to care about this film. Like, they even have faith for audiences to come out Halloween weekend to seeing Five Nights at Freddy's incredibly big. Huge number for a reason. The phenomenon's there. And literally, this is why the number is impactful for a horror video game and a Halloween weekend on top of that. Even for a Blumhouse movie, it overtook Halloween 2018 and became a significant Blumhouse film yet. Not to mention, Blumhouse keeps on getting those hits. They had Megan early this year, still a great film, made over 30-something million opening weekend and legged out strong to 187 worldwide. And on top of that, Universal, let me just say this real quick. Paramount Pictures, if anyone remembers, listen to my podcast over the year I started, Paramount was having a dominant year at theatrical. And I keep rapidly talking about how great the studio is of a comeback. And unfortunately this year, they're not having a significant comeback theatrical action, obviously because of some releases that they put in the bad timings, like Dungeons & Dragons, Mission Impossible. But unlike that, Universal Pictures keep on getting those major hits, banger after banger after banger this year, like Paramount Pictures last year, which I have to praise them a lot because they keep on getting those hits and they are making profitability for a lot of the movies. Megan, Knock at the Cabin, Cocaine Bear, Super Mario movie, Oppenheimer, and then Five Nights at Freddy's. Hit after hit. These are all hits. Obviously, except Renfield, which kind of stinks at this point, obviously. But all these movies, Megan, Knock at the Cabin, Cocaine Bear, Mario, Oppenheimer, Five Nights at Freddy's, there were bangers after bangers. And all were major hits. So I have to give a huge, huge clap. Because I think they're on a hot streak and they're doing a dominant job at the theatrical business. So I'm just going to give them a clean hand. Alright. So they just keep delivering a lot of the things. I know this Day and Date was the only thing I was disappointing at. But at the end of the day, this movie made banging ass money, even it meant to be anyways, for a low budget Blumhouse. And it's all okay. This is a significant big weekend I think we're going to have for box office wise this fall. As we're going to November, just real quick, The Marvels is in trouble. I feel like The Hunger Games is 50-50. But I think Disney's newest animated movie called Wish, and they also, Universal's having another film for an animated movie by DreamWorks, Trolls Band Together. Those kind of movies, I think they'll be hits for sure because they'll go out there and promote this movie. And all I'm saying is, box office wise, if you're a studio and you're still in the strike and you care about these films, that is why these people are coming out to get awareness out. This is a big thing. Why Five Nights at Freddy's also did significantly big on top of the phenomenon. So it's significant. Some of the movies like The Marvels is in trouble because of lack of awareness. And on top of that, the MCU is in like total fatigue at this point. Except Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It's obviously a banger movie. And yeah, The Marvels is in deep trouble for sure. Hunger Games, like I said, it's 50-50 at the moment. We'll see how it goes with the tracking, no pre-sales yet. And then December, I don't know. I don't want to go too much depth into December because we'll see where it goes, honestly, because we don't even know. We're not even sure. I'm not even sure what the hits will be like next month and so forward. But all I know is that if the strike keeps on going, 2024 is going to be in shambles of theatrical business, and there's going to be a lot of shifting to these movies all over again, like the pandemic. So, I feel like in this case, Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the biggest hits we'll get in a while. Other than that, otherwise, we can all hope November will keep things afloat with a couple few movies of hits and so forward. Hopefully, the SAG-AFTRA strike comes to an end at this point before 2024 begins. But alright, with that down, I think that's almost everything I covered on this review of Five Nights at Freddy's. Again, I think it's a solid adaptation. It's not the greatest for like everyone to see, which I can see why. But if you're a Five Nights at Freddy's guy, you're going to love this movie a ton. If you're a gamer who loves adaptations, you'll like this also because the material the studios managed to make this movie well for the fans really worked. And yes, obviously, there's going to be a franchise for this series, for sure. Jason Blum is a great guide to these movies, and I think he's going to keep things rolling with the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise alive. So, we will get to see this stuff in the future, and hopefully for the better, they will improve a few things needed, and I think they'll keep things afloat with the fan base as well. But alright, so, like I said, that's pretty much it for this episode. To keep you all posted as well, I will be seeing a few films next month, and it might be the wrap of Season 2 of I Screen, You Screen for Movies. Obviously, the season of this show is a little shambles because of the hiatus break, the SAG-AFTRA strike killing my fall mood for movies. So, what I'm looking forward to next month, to give you all the heads up to be aware if you do follow my show, I will be reviewing The Marvels. I will be reviewing Hunger Games, The Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes. And then I will be reviewing Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. Those are the 3 films. I will be reviewing those for now. Until something changes, I will keep you all posted. So, one way you can find and support my show is if you follow whenever you're listening on. I prefer Apple because that's the best place where it all matters. If you're even watching this on YouTube, you may not see my face because I don't have a guest this time. But if you are listening to the audiogram of this episode fully on YouTube, subscribe, comment, likes, and share your thoughts on this movie, as well as reaching me out on my email at dscomology@gmail.com. Share me your thoughts for Five Nights at Freddy's. What do you think of it? If you are a fan or if you play the games, let me know. Follow me at social media at Twitter X ISUS4MPod. Excuse me. Twitter X at ISUS4MPod. I will leave that in the show notes. Follow me on TikTok, where I'll be posting audiograms for both these platforms. I haven't been making those a while, but I will be officially getting back to them because I have a lot of ideas that I will be making for this episode and so forward. I cannot wait to get back to the stuff like this. And as well, like I said, follow, subscribe to whatever you're listening on. Apple's the one that matters. And also, don't forget to leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Apple's the one that truly mostly matters. And if you're listening on other platforms, go to that Apple platform and leave me a 5-star review. Really helps for new listeners to find my show. Also, I want to give a quick big shout out to one of my favorite podcast duos that cover box office and movie business. For those that don't know who they are the BO Boys. And man, these guys rock the BO so hard. I was also on their last episode for the weekend preview of Five Nights at Freddy's and Worth My Comeback as well. I think you guys should also check them out and check out their latest episode for the weekend preview of Five Nights at Freddy's, and where I'll be their guest, where I was on their show being as a guest, talking about this movie and the IP as a video game correspondent of the box office, which, letting you all know, I am known for that, and I do love following box office, which is why I also covered the box office for this episode. So don't forget to check out the BO Boys and check out their latest episode for the weekend preview of Five Nights at Freddy's. Love the show, love them and hate them. Follow and subscribe to their podcast, or they also now do YouTube, which is one of the biggest platforms. I think it's worth checking. They always have their face cams on. every episode, even with the guests. I think their YouTube channel is growing, so don't forget, if you like to see their faces, what they look like, check out their YouTube channel as well. The BO Boys Podcast is what you gotta search, and they will pop up immediately, where you will see both Pat and Clayton of the BO Boys, as well as they got two great interns. Wanna BO Boy intern Junior Christopher, and Wanna BO intern Junior Jack. These guys keep their business afloat for the BO Boys, and I think it's worth checking them out. So I want to give them a quick shout out for having me on their episode, and forever grateful. You guys will expect for me to be on their show for quite some time for certain movies worth checking, worth hyping. I will be talking about on the show as well. So follow the BO Boys, follow and subscribe to my podcast. Leave the BO Boys a 5-star review. Really helps for us and them to find their show. Listeners to find their show as well as mine. Really helps. And yeah, I think there's nothing else to say except until next time, I'll be screaming you at I Scream, you scream for movies. Nailed it.